Note to listeners, this episode was recorded in June 2020. The coronavirus, COVID-19, was recognised as a pandemic by the World Health Organization on 11th of March 2020. In this episode, I speak to Jason Cutter about selling with authentic persuasion. We discuss the importance of intent in sales and the need to share your own personal story. Jason explains the difference between those who are authentic manipulators and those that use authentic persuasion. He warns us away from the order takers who try to sell you something even if it's not what you really need. Jason's belief is that marketing done right is leadership. This is an interesting conversation around sales, ethics, and persuasion. Listen up to the rest of the conversation. Before we begin our conversation, here is a quick shout out to the pathologically curious. Check out the Maverick Paradox magazine. It's a digital magazine written by Mavericks for business owners and professionals. You can find the magazine at themaverickparadox.com. The magazine's aim is to provoke maverick leadership everywhere. Welcome to the Maverick Paradox podcast, where we explore what it is to be a maverick and discover effective modes of leadership. I am Judith Germain, and my mission is to propel the maverick mindset into a world where character and integrity will ultimately have a higher premium than personality and bureaucracy. So thank you for joining me on this journey. If you would like to continue with me, then please subscribe to my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other popular podcast platforms. And today, our guest is Jason Cutter. Hi, Jason.
Hi, how are you?
I'm really cool. And you?
I am great.
Excellent, excellent. Before we kick off, tell us about you.
Well, I grew up in the Bay Area in California. It's interesting because now what I do is I help companies and salespeople improve their effectiveness. But I grew up in a very non-sales household. My mom was a banker and a finance manager before she retired. My dad was an engineer and project manager before he retired. And then I went to school for marine biology. I have a degree in that, and I focused on sharks. And then between that and now, I've done so many different things on a very windy path.
I think that is so cool.
Yeah.
So you know how to avoid the sharks in sales then?
You know what? I think it might be easier in the water to avoid those sharks. For most people, you just stay out of the water. It's harder for sure, the sharks in sales.
Yeah, I'm really curious about our conversation today because we're going to talk about selling with an authentic persuasion, which I'm really curious to know more about. So what can you tell me about it?
Yeah, it's really the framework that I came to use for myself, and then with hundreds of salespeople I've helped across various organizations and even in various countries, where it's more of being authentic, being true to you, using self-awareness and your strengths and being who you are instead of trying to pretend to be someone else. There's a lot of times when someone is in a sales role or a selling role, whether they're in a call center or working at a store, or they're a coach or a consultant, and they know that they have to sell somebody on their services to hire them so that they can then do what they like to do more. There's this feeling that you've got to pretend to be something else, what we see in the movies and TV and what we think about when it comes to sales. And I firmly believe the opposite, which is, if you use the power of being who you are and being authentic to your past, your experiences, your talents, your skills, your abilities, and then you marry that with persuasion. So using persuasion instead of manipulation to proactively move the right people forward in the conversations and towards some kind of transaction, towards the sale, then you have this wonderful effect where you're creating very happy clients, that you're solving their problems or helping them achieve a goal and also getting rewarded for it.
That sounds good. So do you see persuasion and influence to be the same thing, or is there a difference?
No, I think it's the same. I mean, it really depends on where you're using it and really the intent. For me, when it comes to manipulation, the intent is to get you to do something for my benefit, right? And then for persuasion, it can be kind of vague when you look at the definition. Persuasion is kind of the same thing, but the way I use it is positive persuasion, which is I'm going to get you to do something that will benefit you based on what I know about what you want and what you're trying to solve or accomplish. And then also get something for myself as well if I'm doing the right thing. Influence, for me, it feels like persuasion, which is okay. And we think of influencers now because that's now the word on social media and online, which is I'm going to influence you to buy this thing or take this action. And then, of course, I'm getting rewarded. For me, I see influence as more of a blind shotgun. Hey, here's this thing and I think it's amazing and everyone should use it, versus persuasion, which is you want X, I have X. Now let's, finish this transaction.
That's really curious, actually, because I would see influence as you discuss persuasion, but then I guess I see influence. So for me, influence and real leadership is the same thing. So I am not seeing it in the sales perspective. So I can see what you're saying, how influence can be seen as almost, in a sales way, a softer version of manipulation. I can see that. But when I'm thinking about influence, I'm thinking about it in terms of really good leadership. So pretty much how you're describing persuasion. So it made me think, I should probably define what I mean when I say influence, so people understand what I'm saying. It shows you how language is really, really important.
Exactly. And I think that's part of it. When I was working on the book that I'm writing, the first thing that my mentor said to me as well, what's your definition of authenticity and what's your definition of persuasion? Like, what does that mean? Because those are words that everyone thinks they know. There's different uses, but even that influence versus persuasion kind of conversation, really, to me, all that matters is the intent. What is the intent? Is it my intent to get you to take action, get out of your comfort zone, get past your fear, and do what you need to do to accomplish your goal or to avoid pain? Am I doing it for you and then I know I'm going to get rewarded in the back end, or is it all about me?
Yeah, and what made me think when you were saying that was that with manipulation, the person doesn't tell them what their intention is. But if you're influencing or persuading in your definition, you are actually quite upfront with it. Do you know what I mean? This is what I'd like you to do because X, Y, Z. You're not trying to do it in a sneaky way. You're actually very upfront about it.
And for me, and this goes back to something you said a few minutes ago about leadership, for me, I see the role of a salesperson as a leader. Now, I'm not talking sales leader as in manager or, vice president of sales or business owner. I mean more of like you are the leader of that conversation and of that transaction, and wanting to be a leader that's using persuasion, using influence to help lead that person to, the finish line, if you will.
That makes sense. Oh, I like that. So what's your definition for authentic then?
For me, that is being true to who you are at the intersection of your talents, your skills, abilities, and experiences, in ways that, is true for you. And I think really the big key, and this is what I see a lot, and this is what I struggled with a lot myself, was I was ashamed and or embarrassed and or tried to keep a lot of my experiences and my path secret. I didn't want to share it because it didn't feel like it fit the standard blueprint, the American dream model, which is, go to school, get a degree, get a job, have a career, start a family, do all those things, and go down this nice linear path, which I don't think anybody does anymore, but at least that's what we're told. And, and the time when I grew up, it was, I was going to be the first one in my family to go to college. And, this would set me on a better path than my parents had, where they had to, work very hard to have what they have. And so for me, authenticity is really just bringing everything of who you are and embracing that, and then not trying to pretend to be somebody else.
But how do you distinguish your viewpoint from people who are being authentically manipulative? So do you know what I mean? So like, because I like what you were saying, authenticity
is something that is overused, and it's kind of presented as like, this is, if you're authentic, everything just falls together. But then there are people who are horrible, and I don't really want to meet or buy from their authentic self. So how does your philosophy sort of distinguish between what you're saying and those other people?
Well, and that's really why, for me, in the framework and everything that I do, it's not the authentic sales process. It's the authentic persuasion process, right? So it's marrying those two together to differentiate it from what you're saying, which I totally agree with it. No one's asked me that before and brought that up, but it's very true, right? Because you can be authentically manipulative because that's who you are. That's how you see the world. And that's what you're going after. And that's what you're going to do to people and to yourself. And I've met those people. I've worked with those people and really done my best to go, I don't want to be like that for my sake and for my customers. That's not the best way to play the game long term. The people who authentically manipulate tend to change jobs a lot, change careers, or change, sales companies, because they're constantly having to find new people or a new thing to sell, or, something shiny. So for me, it's really marrying those things together. It's the authentic and then the persuasion. And in the framework that I focus on, again, it's about the intent, and the outcome is for the benefit of you at first, and then also for me to win, but it's really about your benefit.
That makes sense. I must say, all the people I've ever worked with who have ever been clients of mine have all become friends. And I think that's probably because it's I don't know, it's authentic, and I'm honestly trying to help and support. And, I've been in situations where people want to buy and they've said, like, yeah, I definitely want to buy X, Y, and Z, and this is what I want, and you can deliver it. And I've said, yeah, I don't think that's right for you, though, because, so for example, they've asked me to design a program that will deliver something for their business. And I'll say, yeah, I can do that, but the problem is, until you've done this assessment, or we've reached X point, we don't really know what happens after. So I know you want me to sell you something so you can buy now, but how about if I just sell you this first piece, and then you can honestly take a break at that point and do it yourself, because you'll get an action plan or something, or we can then design something that's definitely going to fit once we know what the key problem is. And people do sound really surprised, like, but I'm going to give you X grand. It's like, but I'll be taking your money, and I can't guarantee I can help you. So I'd rather not take the money. Let me guarantee this part, because this bit I know we can do.
To me, that's the perfect example of how a sales professional would operate and how any professional would operate. I mean, there's a lot of parallels when you're doing sales. And again, so your main job is consulting and mentoring and coaching and leadership, right? But there's the sales aspect, which is to get people to do it. Otherwise, and this is the phrase I use a lot, which is order takers. There's unfortunately a lot of people out there in the world who have a sales role or a sales component, but they're order takers. So they're just waiting for that person with the money in hand who's handing it over, so that they don't have to actually do the sales part. Because mostly what I've seen is they're either not confident or they're afraid of manipulating. So they just don't do anything because they don't see the middle part. But for me, when somebody's achieved, getting to a sales professional level, it's when they can tell the wrong people no, when they're coming from both abundance and doing the right thing with the right intent. It's, hey, I know you want this. It's not a good fit. I can't help you. Here's what you should do, or here's who you should talk to instead. When you do that, it's very powerful, because it will shock the other person. It will shock your prospect that you don't want to just take their money. But it's, doing the right thing for them. I mean, it will. And if you're really good at it, it will leverage into a lot of referrals, because it will shock people, right? Like, imagine going to a mechanic and the mechanic says, no, you don't need to get anything done with your car. Go do this instead. Like, you're going to want to send all your friends there, because you can trust them, right? There's this weird thing that just happened where they didn't try to just take your money for no good reason. And so, when you do that, it's referrals. And then also the power is when you tell the wrong people no that aren't a good fit. When you tell the right people yes, there's so much power in it. And it answers that, like, how do you sleep at night thing? It's like, well, I only push the right people forward, and I tell the wrong people no.
Yes, because for me, it comes from a standpoint of ethics. It's not ethical to take someone's money if you can't help them. It's just the wrong thing to do.
Correct.
Even if you might need the money.
Yeah.
It's probably even especially more important that you stick to your ethical viewpoint, I guess.
Yeah, correct.
Interesting. So how did you get into this?
Well, was in sales in general, like most people, I fell into it. I was working at Microsoft at the time. Our jobs got outsourced to overseas for the first time ever. This was back in 2002. And I needed a job. Family friend said, "Hey, I got a guy. He's running a mortgage company. You could go work for him." And so then I ended up in a sales role with really no training, no idea what I was doing, no background in it, which I think is what happens to a lot of people who end up in a sales role. And had to learn a lot of things the hard way, failed a bunch. Some lessons from 2002, I literally still remember and use to this day and teaching other people. And, then long journey for 17 years of figuring it out and moving around in companies and being in leadership roles and just learning it and observing.
Okay, that sounds good. Were you able right from the beginning to kind of accept that moniker of salesperson, or did it make you kind of feel icky and go, "I'm not a salesperson"?
I think it was easy because it was my title was loan officer, right? So it wasn't even salesperson. And this is 2002 in the US where, it was a hot housing market. Everyone wanted to buy and refinance. So it really didn't take much selling to convince people. There were still mistakes that I made, but it didn't take a lot of sales. It wasn't a lot of arm twisting. People were just begging for loans and to buy houses. So that wasn't so much. It wasn't until later on when I realized what I was doing was sales and then really tried to perfect it. But again, I had been raised in an anti-sales household, and I didn't want to get into sales. I didn't want to deal with people. Then I ended up working in a restaurant, and I didn't want to deal with people. And then I worked at Microsoft, and then I got into sales, and then I realized, hey, I'm here, and what I enjoy doing is helping people and solving problems and helping them get what they want. And then for me, you can label it as sales, but that's what I've embraced.
So your driver is to help people get what they want.
Yeah, and solve problems and trigger some kind of transformation. So, for example, I've never done it. I've never sold cars. I don't think there's anything wrong with selling cars. I think most people should. Somebody's got to sell them. I think most people shouldn't buy new cars. I think most people can't afford them, but they do it anyway. I know why. They're excited by it. I've been there myself. But, for me, whatever I've sold and whatever I've done, it's usually some kind of transformation. It's helping somebody in some way get to a better place or accomplish something. So for me, it's that problem solving and then helping someone, move forward.
So do you think that's the key then? That the willingness or the desire to help someone solve a problem they have, and if you're not able to do that, you shouldn't do sales?
Well, I think what's going to happen is your results and your income's going to reflect it. I mean, like they say, your income is a reflection of your value that you're providing to other people, and you can either sell a lot of small things to a large group of people and make your revenue and show your value that way, right? You solve a small problem. Maybe you're selling let's say knives, and you're solving a small issue, but you can do it a lot. Or you're solving bigger issues and you get paid even more. But for me, that's what the value is. That's what you're doing. That's what business is about. That's what sales is about, is helping someone. And again, it doesn't matter. You could be selling knives, for example, and solving people's issues and helping them with their cooking and their time in the kitchen. And that's fantastic.
Okay, that does make a lot of sense. I have to admit to a confession. I have just downloaded your ebook.
Great.
Do you want to tell the audience about that?
Yeah, so it's called The Power of Authentic Persuasion, and it's really just a journey and stories of some people in my life that I've worked with before or who worked for me, and how they use the power of authentic persuasion. Because this kind of discussion is one that happens all the time. Again, there's two sides of the spectrum. There's the kind of shark manipulator, boiler room, kind of like, slitting throats to get what they want because they don't really care, and taking no prisoners. And then there's the other extreme, like I said, which is people who are operating more like order takers. They're afraid of being that manipulator. They don't want to go down that path. They don't want to do anything close to that. They don't want to use the slick closing lines of like, hey, if I can show you how to save $500 by Friday, is this something you'd be interested in? Right? Like, they don't want to have to use those lines. I know those lines. I'm a student of all things sales, but using those kind of tactics are just, not necessarily for the right outcome. And so people tend to shy away from everything sales related and act as order takers. And again, I think there's this wonderful, effective balance in the middle, which is who you are, and then you're doing the right thing for that other person, and you're moving them forward.
Yeah, because that's really interesting, because that reminded me of something that happened to me where I was working with a local government client, although they weren't a client at that time, and we were in that stage of trying to see whether we would work together. They said that they had a problem, and we said we could resolve it. We got to this position, we're like, yes, you're the supplier we're going for, we want you to start X, Y, and Z, but we really want you to take out this particular part of the program. And it was one of our key differentiators from us and other people. And I really thought really long and hard, because they were absolutely, you're not going to have this in the program, but we'll pay you for everything else. And I said to them, okay, let me think about that and come back to you. So I came back to them the next day and I said, look, I can't take it out, because based on what it is that you say you want to achieve, you need this in the program. I said, I can play with other things, but this needs to stay. And I said, we don't want you. And I said, okay, that's fine. I could probably recommend you to work with somebody else, but we just can't work with you. And then there was this pause, and I said, why do you care so much about this bit? And so then I explained, this is why I think you need it, because it's integral for the whole thing, and it hangs together like this, and it serves this solution. They were like, I'm really glad you fought for it, because yes, we need that, and let's just go ahead. So for them, it wasn't about price. It wasn't like,
no,
you cost you more. It's like, we can't, because it's a proprietary piece, so therefore you can't see it anywhere else. So it's like, we're not sure, being local government, we want to take the risk on this particular part of the program, because we don't know anything about this. But once I explained, they were okay. And I think if I had a more transactional mindset, it would have been, yeah, okay, we'll take it out, but we'll go ahead with the rest of it.
Oh, and I think that's a huge lesson for anyone listening, even more than somebody might realize, is when I hear that story, that's the epitome of what it's like to be both a sales professional and to be a professional, and then also to be a leader using that authentic persuasion piece. Because here's what I know is that if you had gone transactional with that and you had signed them up and then you'd taken their money and done the sessions and whatever it was that you were going to do without that other piece, they would not have been happy. No. Yes, you would have checked the boxes for what they said they wanted, but they wouldn't have been happy because they wouldn't have gotten any real results out of it, because it was missing the secret sauce. And what I know is that if you have something that you're selling and it works a certain way, or you have certain rules or parameters set up, like agreements or contracts or deposits or whatever that might be, when somebody doesn't do it and you bend to get the deal done and accommodate their demands, if you will, the problem is they usually become a terrible client, right? They then want to make other demands, or they're still not happy because they're trying to get you to play by their rules instead of you helping them within your framework. And whenever you do that, it doesn't work. So that's an amazing story. That's actually super powerful for people to utilize and kind of model after, which is, the service you're providing, the value, what it will do. And again, that it's either going to be great for someone or it's not going to be a good fit. And then also that abundance side.
Yeah, and it wasn't an easy decision. It wasn't like, well, no, you've got to have it, because we really want you to do that work. Do you know what I mean? Really wanted to. And it had taken months to get that point as well. And it's like, oh, you're going to be throwing away months and months of work. But it was like, I wouldn't be happy because I wouldn't be able to deliver what I know I can deliver. It's not going to work out. So exactly. I did a podcast probably a couple of years ago with somebody who came on, and their argument was strategic marketing is the same as strategic leadership. Marketing and leadership is the same thing, but from a different perspective. So with your persuasive sales, do you think that's similar?
I think it's all the same. In fact, for me, several times in my career, I have led sales, marketing, and sometimes operations. For me, I see the customer journey, like the person who's starting out as a prospective lead all the way to the customer, as one journey. Marketing starts the conversation, whether it's a blog article or a podcast that gets somebody thinking about it, or it's a banner ad, or it's an email, whatever it is, right? Whatever is starting that conversation between me, the company, or the individual salesperson, and you, the prospective lead, that conversation should then be continued when they interact with me, the salesperson, right? Like, I'm just continuing that conversation. The problem in a lot of organizations is marketing versus sales, right? Sales says, give us better leads. Marketing says, close the leads. They're good, right? And so it's kind of this battle, and it's that way in most organizations, instead of it being a continuation. And I agree. I mean, I think marketing, when done right, is leadership, because it's also attracting the right people and then wanting to lead them down this path towards their goals, or avoiding pain, whatever that might be. And so it's leading them in the same way as a salesperson, right? Like, even just a person sitting in a cubicle on a phone, it's your job to lead that prospect and continue that conversation that marketing started.
Yeah, that's true. And opt out of that journey if it's not the right one for the customer, because that's going to be a better outcome than your sales target.
And that's what marketing should do as well. Marketing should tell the right people what it is that they do and how they can help them, right? In alignment with their vision, their mission, their core values. And it should tell the wrong people as early as possible that it's not a good fit for you, right? Even before the sales process.
Because it was really interesting. I remember years ago when I was a young thing, I was like, what's years ago? I remember working for this company where they had this huge marketing campaign for a product. And I remember doing like the professional degree in that industry. And I remember watching the ads on television going, hey, we can't offer that because that's not legal. It was just like, huh? And it was so bizarre, because the marketing had a fantastic idea and said, right, we're going to market this product, which was a fantastic product. Everybody rang up, and then people on the phones were like, we can't offer you this. We're not allowed to. And it was that kind of, how did nobody check before you spent thousands on a television campaign that it wasn't legal? It wasn't like it was a bad thing. It was just because of the industry, it had very peculiar laws.
Sure.
So you just couldn't sell it. You couldn't sell this. There was a reason no one else was selling it, because you're not allowed to. But it was interesting that nobody in marketing had actually bothered to find out whether it's possible. Somebody must have sat there and gone, this is a great product. Let's just put this thing together.
Well, and sometimes I've seen it where the leadership at the very top is then pushing marketing to, live up to some kind of metric, some KPI, some results or response. And either they're telling them, hey, let's try this and just do whatever you need to generate sales, or marketing is disconnected and doesn't understand what is sold and being sold and what is allowed to be sold. I mean, I've also seen it where, people go from marketing into the conversation with the salesperson, and the conversation is totally different, right? They're promising, red apples, and the person gets on the phone and is trying to be sold, oranges, and it doesn't fit, and the person's confused because they don't understand it. And that's where those departments, in my opinion, to be successful, always have to be married at the hip.
So I think it just made me think what you were saying earlier, is that kind of, what's your intention? Because it reminded me of somebody else was a very persuasive seller, in the sense that, I don't know if you have it in the States, we have a bit, our consumer laws are a bit different, so that if somebody comes to your property to sell you something, so you've invited them in like a salesperson, then you're right to decline the contract. I think you have like hours or something. But if they phone up, then you've got longer. I can't remember which way around it is, but there's a difference between whether you go to them or they come to you, whether you can get like a 7 days cancellation notice or something. And this guy came round to do a fitted wardrobe, and he was in the house for like forever. And in the end, it's like, look, and then he had those kind of, those traditional kind of sales things where they say, oh, let me just pop to my car, and it comes back, oh, I can give you a 50% discount if you sign up today.
Right.
You're like, I know I'm young, but I'm not stupid. Anyway, so in the end, I sort of said, look, you need to go home, and I'm not interested. And he actually said, but 80 or 90% of my customers, if they don't buy today, they're never going to buy.
Right.
And it was like, well, there you go. There's a really good reason for you to go now. And he was just staying in the house and refusing to leave, to the point I said, do I have to call the police for you to go home?
Wow.
You know what I mean? Because it was just like, and that's what he said, but if I go now and you don't sign up, you're not going to sign up. And I'm like, well, no, I'm not. And I don't know if you ever get those kind of salespeople, or even if it was just I'm not leaving the house until you sign up, and it's like, well, I'll have to call the police then.
And I have, and that's the unfortunate side with a lot of people who get into sales, is they get desperate. They need to close deals. They need to make money, or there's this pressure. If you don't sell, like they're not going to meet their quota, and maybe they're going to get fired, right? So it's not always just about
trying to guilt you into it, because that's what they were saying. It's like, well, it's not my fault.
Yep. And so what happens is this vicious loop, right? Because they're desperate, they push hard. Because they're pushing hard, they're not going to close as many deals, versus just having a conversation and relaxing and using something like authentic persuasion instead of trying to force it, right? And understanding that there's some people you're just not going to sell to, right? You're not going to close 100%. But when it's a good fit, then it should be a good fit. And those are the ones that you should get.
I think he talked himself out of the sale, because the reason we wanted him there was because we liked what they had and we had the money to buy it, but he wouldn't tell us because they had to come and measure and everything. He wouldn't actually tell us how much it was, because he just kept wanting to upsell, even though he'd like had a closed sale, and then he just kept trying to upsell. And to the point, it was like, now you just won't leave my house, and I'm hungry and I want to cook dinner tonight.
Yeah. Well, and it's like we know about animals sensing fear, right? Like a dog can sense when somebody doesn't like dogs, and they act totally different. Prospects, you in your house, when that person came, you could sense either the fear or the lack of confidence. When somebody just won't answer the question, right? Like I use this example all the time. If you go to, here in the States, the DMV or any kind of government office, and you ask them, hey, what do I have to do? Okay, here's the paperwork. How much is it going to cost? Okay, it's going to be $200. Okay, what about this? Here, like, it's just very yes, no transactional. Here's the answers, right? There's no games. The person at the government office where you have to pay a fee for something isn't going to beat around the bush and then not tell you and then maybe try to upsell. No, they just tell you, right? And so if you're in sales and you're confident and you're helping people, you should have that same attitude, which is like, here's the fee, here's what I do, here are the options, right? When it's appropriate in the conversation.
So I'm looking at your ebook, because I downloaded it, like I said, and it says The Power of Authentic Persuasion, Becoming a Sales Superstar. So I will definitely be reading it, but give me a sneak peek. How do I become a sales superstar?
It's doing what you're already doing. You're already there. I already know it. It's using the stuff we talked about. It's that authentic persuasion formula in embracing leadership as a salesperson, that you want to help other people get what they want.
Wow. That's quite powerful, actually. I think people would be less frightened of sales if they just saw it as helping somebody else.
Exactly.
Excellent. It's probably a good place to stop there. But before I do, is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you? Because if there is, here's your chance now to tell me.
No, you did a great job. We took a long journey throughout all this. I mean, I think one of the biggest keys too, and I talk about this a lot, but it's the self-awareness piece. Being who I am now and the journey that I took through everything. Again, like I said, I beat myself up for the longest time. It wasn't until later on, like late 30s, when I realized, wait, everything I'd been through has made me who I am and given me experiences and the positives and the negatives, the ups and the downs. And, it's all made me who I am. But it's that self-awareness piece that I always support everyone in exploring and understanding. It's, what do you like doing? Where can you provide the most value? What do you enjoy doing? What are your strengths? And then what are your weaknesses? And go more on your strengths than trying to change who you are. Just be more, mindful and self-aware.
Brilliant. I can definitely get behind that. So would you come back again if we found another subject?
Yeah, for sure. There's so much stuff we can talk about. I have so many different things we can talk. You want to talk about sharks. You want to talk about different things I've done, different topics. I mean, anything mindset related, marketing, leadership. It's all fun. There's a lot of great stuff in there.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you once again for tuning into the Maverick Paradox podcast. I hope you have enjoyed listening to my conversation with Jason as much as I enjoyed having it.
At the Maverick Paradox, we improve your impact and influence by enabling you to effectively strategize, innovate, and execute. To find out more, contact us at judith@maverickparadox.com. Thank you. If you are pathologically curious and would love to find out more about the Maverick Paradox, then please subscribe to this podcast on one of the popular podcast platforms. Alternatively, you could explore our resources on Mavericks at maverickparadox.com or read the Maverick Paradox magazine. We publish frequently each week. If you subscribe, you will get our monthly newsletter. And let's not forget my book, The Maverick Paradox, The Secret Power Behind Successful Leaders. For those that love a good discussion, you could apply to join our exclusive Facebook group. Finally, if you would like to work with us or are interested in the Maverick at work, check out maverickparadox.co.uk.